Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Vince Coglianese.
Good afternoon to you. 4:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, we're going to get into the big impeachment inquiry hearing today on the Hill. Democrats doing everything they can to stop this thing in its tracks. Jamie Raskin's not even wearing a bandana today. That's how serious he is about stopping this. Chris Bedford will join us at the top of the hour to discuss that. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. In fact, the name that's on the minds and lips of all these Democrats today isn't Joe Biden, it's Donald Trump. They keep mentioning Trump in an impeachment inquiry hearing about Joe Biden, which will come as no surprise to you. Donald Trump, for his part, last night was meeting with auto workers in Clinton Township, Michigan. Headed out there. This is after he had made an announcement that he would be doing that very thing. And then Joe Biden was rushed out by White House staff to meet with auto workers a day before Trump got there to try and, not let Trump have a complete victory here in this news cycle. Here's a little bit of Donald Trump's remarks last night.
When I came into office, the auto industry was on its knees, gasping its last breaths after 8 long years of Obama and Biden. But you finally got a president who stood up to you got to understand, I stood up to people that hate you. They hate you. Or they maybe hate our country. But I stood up for you. I stood up for the auto workers and stood up for the great state of Michigan like nobody's ever stood up before.
Yeah, so Donald Trump last night in a speech that lasted around an hour, it was a long one, speaking to those auto workers. Among the people who were there is a man who traveled with the former president yesterday, both to and fro. Henry Rogers is the chief national correspondent for the Daily Caller, and he joins me now. Henry, good to have you with us, sir.
Vince, always a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
What was the trip like yesterday with the president?
Always electric. I will say he's a fun person to travel with, especially the way he travels. It's nicer than how I usually travel. I will say that. But no, the president was in good spirits. We hopped on the plane there in Palm Beach, and we flew off to Michigan. On the way, he kind of was laying out some points that he thought he would bring up to these auto workers, where there were also some union folks there in this Michigan factory. We toured the factory for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then Trump gave his speech, which I do think dominated the news cycle. I mean, everyone was talking about how much of a mess of the debate was, and I didn't get to actually see how bad the debate was until I got back on the plane with Donald Trump, and he finally turned it on and started watching it again. And, let's just say his reactions were quite something.
Really? Was he laughing at what he was seeing? Was he commenting on it?
A lot of comments, a lot of laughter, I will say, and to put it in a blunt way, you could just tell that he is not concerned about a single person on that stage. I will say one interesting thing that he did tell me on the record was that Doug Burgum was he thought that he did a great job last night. He's happy that he's been attacking him like other people on stage. Mm-hmm. And I think he knows he doesn't have a shot and is trying to be the other businessman on stage, maybe get a cabinet position. But
yeah.
Overall, I will say, I mean, it sounds like Trump dominated the news cycle yesterday.
Yeah, actually, there is a thing though that I've seen in the past. Doug Burgum is worth billions. I think he's worth $1 billion. He's not a poor man. And Donald Trump has a respect for people who do make good money. He looks at them and there's a reverence there. And also, as you noted, Burgum's polling so low right now that of course the tack to take is, oh, isn't that nice, and pat him on the head. What a nice guy.
Exactly. And Trump went with that, and I said to him, you think you'd consider him for a cabinet position? And he looked at me kind of like, he's the only one I'd probably consider on stage, kind of that kind of look. But, our interview was nice because we had a one-on-one sit down. The Daily Caller had a one-on-one sit down with the president, the former president, and our topics range from, his latest legal issues to, Taylor Swift. So it's been kind of it was a wide-ranging interview, and he was in good spirits. I will say that guy has more energy than anyone I know. It was 3 a.m. when we landed, pretty much, 2 a.m. when we landed, and he was still ready to roll. I was ready to roll his bed. So it was.
So this is when you say that, this isn't like Karine Jean-Pierre saying that Biden is the most energetic person in the White House. You actually mean this?
No, I mean, this is the third time I've flown with President Trump, and I will say every single time I've done it, I was clearly more exhausted than he was. I'm 28 and I think he's in his 70s. So let's just put it that way. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, well, maybe you got to do the Trump diet. How much McDonald's did you eat on the plane yesterday?
Well, we had a quarter pounder and I had a couple of nuggets. I couldn't finish all 10 of them, but that's the other special that you have to look forward to on Trump Force One.
Does everyone really get McDonald's? Like, so if you fly with Trump, you eat McDonald's? Is that the plan?
That's the plan. That's the plan. And when I got on the plane yesterday, I asked, one of the first questions I asked his aides was, what's for dinner tonight? And they said, the usual. And I knew what that meant. So I didn't even have to ask.
Okay, let's get into some of the content here. You mentioned that you talked to Trump about the effort to go after his money. There's that judge in New York this week who said that Donald Trump was defrauding banks by overstating the value of his assets in order to gain loans. Now, as I've been pointing out, none of the banks actually say that. All of the banks are perfectly happy working with Donald Trump because he pays his interest on time. And they've made a profit from him. It's Democrat officials in New York who are making this allegation, trying to destroy his business. What does the former president think of this effort?
Well, it's very interesting that you put it that way, Vince, and that's the way that I laid it out to him, because a lot of other people are not laying it out that way. The media, the government officials who are doing this to him. They're not laying it out that way. So when I said, sir, are there any banks that have had problems with you or have said that you have been, in any way, like, defrauding them or anything like that? He looked at me kind of shocked for a little bit, and he said, that is such a great question. He said, no, actually. He said, I have a phenomenal relationship with all these banks. He said, they've always been paid. They always have, I have this great disclaimer in my legal clause agreement. And he said that this is a complete hit job. He said that his Mar-a-Lago estate is worth $1.8 billion. And I don't know if anyone who's listening knows, but this judge was saying it was worth about $18 million. So the valuation there is very different.
The Mar-a-Lago estate is what, about 20 acres, 20 acres in size? It's a big estate, right?
It is indeed. And it's right on the water in the most prime part of Palm Beach.
And there's that place, there's that wooded lot that's right down the street. It's I think it's 2 acres. And it goes for $150 million. It has nothing built on it. It's just a bunch of trees. $150 million, a 2-acre property. Well, a 20-acre property, if it was 10 times as much, this is obviously not 1-to-1. That's $1.5 billion. So,
exactly.
Like, I don't know. He can make a case, right? And
well, I honestly don't think his evaluation is too far off. After seeing the Zillow listing for that and being at Mar-a-Lago many times, seeing the insane gold everywhere, how well it's built, the several buildings, the pools, all of that. It just, it doesn't really make much sense.
Yeah.
There's clearly an agenda there, and Trump is aware of that. He told me, he's going to continue to appeal everything that crosses his way. It's just going to be an appeal. And I honestly think that he's expecting more subpoenas to come, and he's not really worried about it, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It's clearly on the back of his mind, and it's something that he thinks about, but he knows, when you talk to him, he knows that that he has the support of so many American people, and it's interesting to see how much that means to him.
He told you last night, and I know his campaign also said something to this effect in a statement, that the RNC needs to stop these debates, that they've run their course. Give us a sense of how that conversation went.
Well, I was just very curious because I wanted to know, so like yesterday's debate, they had this moderator from Univision who has been known to call Trump, basically a racist in the past, and has said very, very bad things about Trump in the past. And I was curious why the RNC is allowing this moderator to even be there. Like, you would think, as if you were Trump, you would be kind of mad about that. So he was. He said that the RNC needs to. He doesn't really have faith in them. He said they need to completely cancel any future GOP debate. Needs to be canceled because all it is going to do in his mind is hurt the Republican Party. He was calling it a S show last night on the plane. And just saying how much of a disaster. He kept saying it was a disaster. It was a disaster. How embarrassing for the party. And I think that's what he's saying is that, it's not helping anyone at this point. His numbers continue to rise in polls, it seems like. So, at this point, why are we even doing the debate?
But here's the mystery about this particular position from Trump. I can see why he thinks the debate should end. He's got a huge lead, and it's only growing, apparently, with each passing debate. We'll see what happens after the second one. But Trump picked Ronna McDaniel. He endorsed the woman who is running the RNC. He picked the lady who kind of set the plan up here. So in a sense, he owns this a bit, doesn't he?
And that's a funny point, Vince, because when I mentioned Ronna to Trump last night, he really would not mention her name or really go after Ronna. I did pick up on that. That's one thing I did pick up on. He was attacking the RNC and certain things about the moderators and the platform and who's on stage, but he would never say anything really negative about Ronna in person to me, even off the record, which I found interesting.
Yeah, that is totally interesting. Okay, so you have that. A couple of other things here. He also talked about Bob Menendez. Menendez is getting busted for what Biden should have been busted for a long time ago. The feds claim that they caught Bob Menendez with hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash and gold bars inside of his home. He is a cartoon villain who's now being prosecuted by the federal government. Why does Donald Trump suspect that's happening?
Well, I had to let him know first off that Bob Menendez is an old friend of mine who, tried to call the cops on me back in the day. But in all seriousness, he kind of defended Bob Menendez. He was saying that I said to him, "Do you think it was a direct attack on Bob Menendez, this indictment?" And he said, "I think it was a direct attack." And he said that he's like, this has happened at a time where Bob Menendez is not agreeing with Democrats very well or Joe Biden very well, and said that was the reason why they went after him, which I found very interesting. I think that Trump genuinely is so frustrated with the legal system that at this point he will take the side of anyone who has not been found guilty yet.
Yeah. Menendez, who is a Cuban American, he was always unhappy with Obama and Biden for trying to normalize relations with Cuba. He was attacking them on a routine basis. So he was not on I don't think he was on good terms with Obama. And it's probably a bad move to be on bad terms with Obama if you're a Democrat.
Right.
So there may be something to that.
And Menendez also, Trump also said it's a two-tier system of justice, and by that he means okay, well, Biden has stolen way more money than Menendez, so why is Biden not in jail? And he kept repeating that line as well, which is I think a fair point. But obviously Menendez has not been found guilty yet. Trump has not been found guilty yet, so we'll see what happens there. But again, it's interesting to see Trump kind of defending a New Jersey Democrat.
Last piece for you, and all of this, by the way, is in your coverage on the Daily Caller, so people can find it there. But you mentioned you talked to Donald Trump about the topic of federalizing Washington, D.C. What does that mean? What did he have to say on that subject?
Well, it was kind of interesting because I was just talking to him about the judge. I can never say the name, Tanya Chutkan.
Yeah.
And how she, denied his appeal or whatever it was. And he said to me, I'm just going to continue to appeal. And I'm not really worried about this case at all. He's like, we have to clean up D.C. And the only way we can clean up D.C. and also make sure that I don't have to testify or that I don't have to deal with this is if we federalize Washington, D.C. And he didn't really expand on the issue very much. I tried a couple follow-up questions, and he was like, "You're the only person who knows this." I don't know if it was a legal thing that he's going on with, but it sounds like he wants to federalize Washington, D.C. And I just don't know where it goes from
here's what he said. I'm
ever said that.
I'm going to read the verbatim quote for people so they can hear what he said to you, because you wrote it down for us. It says, quote, "And we're also going to be appealing the venue, because the venue, I say, we have to federalize Washington, D.C. We have to make it safe. We have to make it clean. We have to make it beautiful here. How can they try me in Washington, D.C.? If I say we're going to federalize, so you can have that, nobody else has that," he says, meaning you're the only reporter who got this particular scoop. My guess is, if I had to suss out what he means by it, there is some chatter on the right, including from people like Julie Kelly, that the D.C. Circuit Court in particular, but the D.C. is just an out-of-control system of injustice, especially when it comes to conservatives, that they cannot get a fair trial in this city, and that the D.C. Circuit Court in particular needs to be defunded and collapsed. Because it is not serving the American people. It is not living up to the oaths under the Constitution. It is not working. And that includes getting rid of the U.S. attorney here in D.C., too, Matthew Graves. There's just so much that needs to be done. And my guess is that he's alluding to that, but I'm not actually quite sure what he means.
That's actually what I was assuming. Julie Kelly's great. She's done amazing work. And I think that's kind of where my head was going on that process. Again, he wouldn't really allude to it. I think he was worried about legal problems and saying, "Hey, I'm kind of giving you this as a nice scoop here." But, as we both know, Washington, D.C. does need to be cleaned up. And it will be interesting to see what that process, if he was elected and that were to be a thing, what that would look like. I think it was an interesting point. And I don't know if it would save him or not. But I just know that he's going to continue fighting. He's not taking
I know.
deals anytime.
Yeah, I'm glad he had this conversation with you, but I wouldn't be surprised if the judge all of a sudden is linking to Henry Rogers' stories and attacking Trump in the near term. We'll see. Henry Rogers from the Daily Caller, thank you very much for giving us a recount of a very interesting day yesterday. Thank you, sir.
Vince, thank you as always.
Of course, 4:23 now.
Weeknights with Mark Levin, 6 to 9 p.m.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
I just forgot at the beginning of the interview with Henry Rogers, he mentioned that Trump talked about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. I got to find out what that was about. I'm going to see if Henry can get me an answer. And in the meantime, I've got more coming up for you, including the New York Times and a buffoonish fact check of last night's debate. Wait until you find out the claims they were, quote, checking. Also, the impeachment inquiry kicks off today. Some of the audio, some of the drama. That's all ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 4:35 here on News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. And Chris Bedford's going to join us at the top of the hour. A lot to discuss with him. News of the day, this crazy 2024 primary, and impeachment and so much more. We've got this impeachment inquiry going on today, and it's been wild. Democrats are so angry that Republicans are even noticing Biden's corruption that they just keep saying, there's no evidence, there's no basis for this. Trump, government shutdown. They're doing everything they can not to talk about what's staring them in the face, which is one of the most corrupt people who's ever occupied the White House. It's just true. And it's deeply unfortunate, isn't it? And you would think there would be some honesty across the aisle on this subject, but there is not. There is not. It's just a lot of obfuscation, a lot of kicking up dust. There's some concession, it seems like, that Hunter Biden's a different person than his dad, and he had a rough time, and whatever crimes he may have committed, he should suffer the consequences, just like Donald Trump. They'll say stuff like that. But okay, if you were to peel that argument back just ever so slightly, what is Hunter alleged to have done? He's alleged to have used access to his father in order to enrich himself. And so the critical question, I think, to which we have the answer a bunch of times, is, has Joe Biden sold out this country in order to enrich his family? And the answer to that question is a resounding yes. He exploited his position of power to make the family rich. They didn't get rich off of government jobs. They got rich off of exploiting a government job. Through the years, $20 million. Who's paying the family? The Biden family, $20 million. And for what reason? These are bribe payments. And bribery is impeachable in the United States Constitution. So what we have right now is an impeachment inquiry, separate and distinct from articles of impeachment. That it is totally justified to launch an inquiry to dig for more evidence, given the mountain of evidence we're staring at right now. Jonathan Turley, the George Washington University law professor, was among the witnesses today. And that makes sense. Turley's an expert on this subject. Turley was an expert during the Clinton impeachment. Turley was an expert during the Trump impeachment, the first one. They didn't even assemble a panel of experts at all for the 2021 Trump impeachment. But Turley's got a lot of experience with this, and he came in today and he sounded very sober, and he was very concerned about the evidence stacked up against Biden. And he said, look, I'm just going to give it to you straight based on what I see here.
Thank you, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, members of the committee. It's an honor to appear before you today to talk about what is undoubtedly the most weighty constitutional decision that you have under Article 1, other than the declaration of war, and that is the potential impeachment of a president of the United States. It was roughly 25 years ago that I appeared in the impeachment proceedings with other experts in the impeachment of President William Clinton. It was 4 years ago that I appeared in the impeachment proceedings for President Donald Trump. And then it was just 3 years ago that another impeachment occurred without any hearings at all.
Yeah, and so remember, the Democrats went year after year after year with impeachments of Donald Trump. Impeachment for his looking into Joe Biden's corruption, impeached for that, and then impeached for the events of January 6th, where he called on people to be peaceful, right? Remember all of this. And Turley says he's very concerned with how frequently Washington has been wielding the impeachment power.
The shortening intervals between impeachments should be a cause of concern and circumspection for all the members on both sides.
Right, and so you can read that multiple ways. One way to look at that is, we got to be careful. We shouldn't be impeaching everybody all the time. Well, certainly that's a warning to Democrats. Stop impeaching Trump over and over and over for no reason. Secondly, it's troubling that we have public leaders who have to be impeached. Isn't that a bad thing? It should be a deep concern that we're at the point where we need to impeach the sitting president of the United States because of his corruption. We've got to figure out a way to have people who we don't need to impeach in office. Turley explains this is not an impeachment hearing. This is an inquiry.
And I want to emphasize what it is that we're here today for. This is a question of an impeachment inquiry. It is not a vote on articles of impeachment. In fact, I do not believe that the current evidence would support articles of impeachment. That is something that an inquiry has to establish.
I disagree with Turley. I mean, he's the constitutional law professor, but I disagree with him here. I think that there is a mountain of evidence in front of us that would justify the impeachment of Joe Biden. And not just on the issues of bribery that are well established, but the issues surrounding ignoring our laws as they relate to our border, not enforcing them, and allowing hundreds of thousands of Americans to die as a result.
But I also do believe that the House has passed the threshold for an impeachment inquiry into the conduct of President Biden.
Now, the Democrats only clipped one portion of Turley's remarks today. Which portion do you think that was? It was the one that was earlier in that cut that was about, I don't think we have crossed the threshold for articles of impeachment. So Democrats are running around today going, even the Republican witness says that we haven't achieved the threshold for this. Why are we holding these hearings? Yada, yada, yada. But what they cut out is the second half of that statement, the one where he says, yeah, we have absolutely crossed into the threshold for an impeachment inquiry. They have no interest in sharing that. There's an important part of Turley's testimony today that I think deserves some attention, so I'm going to give it some attention, which is there are commentators out there, certainly on the left, also some on the right, who are making the claim, well, we haven't yet established a direct payment to Joe Biden, so we don't have evidence of bribery. But that's a false way of thinking about this for any number of reasons. But one of the most important is if Joe Biden is taking actions to enrich his son, he's involved in a bribery scheme. That's not even, it doesn't require Joe Biden to have a paycheck with his name on it. Hunter Biden receiving money for Joe Biden's actions is a bribery scandal. It is corruption. Listen to Turley make this point today.
Thank you. Professor Gerhardt, it wasn't just a speech. He leveraged $1 billion of
This is Jim Jordan. Professor Gerhardt is the left-wing law professor.
American tax money, and he did so at a time when our government was supportive of the prosecutor. Here's what our government said. The Assistant Secretary of State, we've been impressed with the ambitious reform and anti-corruption agenda of your government, written to the Prosecutor General, who Joe Biden leverages our money to get fired. The United States fully supports your efforts to fight corruption, she further wrote. The Interagency Policy Committee said this on October 1st, 2015.
Okay, so what Jim Jordan's emphasizing here is a debunking of the left's position on the Victor Shokin firing, right? Because he's saying this is the United States State Department under Barack Obama complimenting the work of Victor Shokin, saying you are doing a good job rooting out corruption in your country. This happened before Biden called for his firing and threatened to withhold the $1 billion. That's Jim Jordan citing Obama State Department documents here. So again, evidence? Yeah, there's evidence.
The IPC recommends moving forward with a third loan guarantee to Ukraine in the near term. And even after Joe Biden gives the speech on December 9th, the European Commission said, their report said the anti-corruption benchmark is deemed to have been achieved for Ukraine. But the most telling evidence is what his business partner said. Devin Archer, when we deposed him under oath just 2 months ago, said this. Here's the question. The request was help from the United States government to deal with the pressure they were under from their prosecutor. You know what Mr. Archer's response was? That's correct. Next question. What did Hunter Biden do after he was given that request? He called his dad. That's what we're investigating. That's one of the three things Professor Turley talked about, the influence peddling scheme. I want to go to those three things, Professor Turley. False statements, influence peddling scheme, and Joe Biden might have benefited. Let's do the third one first. Is a benefit to your family, can a benefit to your family be a benefit to you?
It is. There's been repeated statements that you need to show that President Biden accepted direct money in order for this to constitute a benefit, even under criminal cases that deal with bribery, extortion, the Hobbs Act. The courts actually have rejected that. They've said that money going to family members is, in fact, a benefit. And I don't really see any legal basis for that. Obviously, the strongest case is if you have a direct payment. But this idea that you can have millions going to a politician's family and that's not a benefit, I think is pretty fallacious.
Yeah. How about the false claims thing?
Yeah. Isn't that good? That's a tight little summary of what's going on here. So the goalposts, don't let them be moved around. You know, at weekend dinner parties with lefty friends. Well, there's no evidence that Biden himself got it. Joe Biden. Did Hunter Biden get money? Yeah, he did. There's no dispute about that. Did Joe Biden do something in furtherance of him being enriched? Yeah. How many times did Joe Biden get on the phone? We have no idea. We know it's dozens, at least, with business partners in order to smooth things over and enrich his son. What period of time did this occur? Was he a government official? Yes, he was. He was vice president of the United States when he was doing this. What about his relationship with Hunter Biden's business partners? Extensive. He's got letters with his signature written on them, notes written to the business partners. Great to see you. I'm so happy that you guys are working together. You've got Tony Bobulinski on the record testimony before both the FBI and then, of course, in public on the Tucker Carlson program, as it existed at one point on the Fox News channel, where he says, yeah, 1,000%. Joe Biden is the big guy. We were structuring deals in order to cut him in 10%. There is no question that Joe Biden was doing that. You have forms, FD 1023 form, which is a credible FBI source laying out a bribery scheme with Burisma, and saying that Zlochevsky, the head of that Ukrainian energy company, has multiple recordings with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden where they're discussing the bribes. One of the funny moments today was the Levi Strauss era, that Democrat Goldman. Dan Goldman, he said today, he's like, well, let me submit into the record an article where Zlochevsky says there wasn't a bribe. Okay. Why would Zlochevsky come out and be like, yeah, I bribed Joe Biden? Why would Zlochevsky do that? What a preposterous thing. Yes, I was involved in a criminal scheme, United States of America, to sell out your country. The stuff that these people come out with. So enriching Hunter is enough. It is enough. But again, 10% for the big guy, it even goes beyond Hunter getting the cash or Jim Biden getting the cash. So that was some of the testimony today from Jonathan Turley. Jim Jordan, who you just heard from a moment ago, he laid out some of the story here as he understands it. Let's see here. Here's a little Jim Jordan today.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. This is a tale as old as time. Politician takes action that makes money for his family, and then he tries to conceal it. Never forget 4 fundamental facts. Hunter Biden gets put on the board of Burisma, gets paid a lot of money. Hunter Biden's not qualified, fact number 2, to sit on the board. Not my words, his words. And
let me pause and just add some extra stuff here. And meanwhile, the Burisma people are coordinating with Joe Biden's vice presidential office. That's actually happening. And the vice president's office is fielding calls about Burisma and then working with Hunter on how to talk about those calls from the press. So, Hunter's status on the board of Burisma, well known to the vice president of the United States and well known to Obama officials, some of whom warned Joe Biden, you've got to get Hunter off of this board. He cannot be there. This is a terrible idea. Joe ignored them. In fact, Joe would later lie about this. He just lied recently about, nobody told me, nobody warned me about my son being on the board. That's not true. It's a complete lie. It's a complete lie. In fact, Biden's lies about this subject should really be a dead giveaway, shouldn't they? How many times has he lied about this?
That he got on the board because of the brand, because of the name. Fact number 3, the executives at Burisma asked Hunter Biden to weigh in and help them with the pressure they are under from the prosecutor in Ukraine. Fact number 4, Joe Biden goes to Ukraine on December 9th, 2015, gives the speech attacking the prosecutor that starts the process of getting that guy fired.
Yeah. So that's just a small piece of all of this. Today's hearing was, as we say in journalism, a curtain raiser. It was designed to introduce the audience to the known facts. Here's what we know, and here's why we're doing this. They had a number of experts out there, people who have experience looking into fraud and into criminal enterprises, how they structure things, how they use shell companies. You had Eileen O'Connor. She worked in DOJ tax before as one of the top people there, whose job it was to examine tax crime, and that's certainly relevant for Hunter Biden. She was distressed today, by the allegations by the IRS whistleblowers that the government allowed the statute of limitations to run out on some of the most scandalous, important years in the Biden family's enrichment. They just let that happen. They just let it expire. They were investigating him for years, and they knew the statute of limitations was coming up, and they let it roll. Why did they do that? Because they're protecting him. They're protecting that whole family. And she said today, she's never seen that anywhere else. You would not have that privilege, unless Hunter Biden's listening to me right now. Hunter, you have that privilege. Everybody else, nobody would have that privilege. Except for you, Hunter. You're the only one that this is extended to. Why? Same reason that those guys hired you in the first place. A corrupt family. A corrupt family. All right, hold on. I've got more for you, and Chris Bedford just moments away. It's 4:51.
Know the news the minute you wake up. O'Connor and Company with Larry O'Connor. 5 to 9 a.m. on WMAL.
CNN is unhappy about the impeachment inquiry hearings today. Here is Karen Finney, longtime Democrat, on the network today as spotted by Curtis Houck over at Newsbusters. He posted this to his social media. Here's what Karen Finney had to say about the impeachment inquiry.
And, I continue to believe that one of the things about why this is so dangerous is at the heart of it, we're talking about, Hunter probably did some things that are unethical, we wouldn't like. But he's a recovering drug addict. And I do think that there are a lot of people who have a lot of compassion and know people. I have some in my own family who behaved horribly while they were using. And I think it does keep coming back to that. And there's no evidence to suggest that the president did anything other than try to help his son get.
Yeah, you see, if you do drugs, your father can't be corrupt. That's the get out of jail free card. And I love this. They always escape into victimhood. They're like, how do we make the Biden's victims here? How do we rescue them from this problem of their own creation? Well, just say Hunter was addicted to crack. He's the victim of this. It was a tough period in his life. Imagine what he could do if he wasn't addicted to drugs. The millions he could get from foreign despots and tyrants and corrupt organizations. 20 million? Oh, pshaw, that's nothing. He could have had $100 million, but he was stifled by his addiction. And that's the real story here. A father who loves his son who's just trying to make it through. Coming up, Chris Bedford tries to untangle the craziness of today's news. That's ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.